Welcome back. My name is Patrick Nolan. I'm an attorney licensed in the state of Missouri. This is Pat Talks Law. Windshield time. It's episode 19.05, and today let's talk about negotiation. There is a whole lot of people that are upset about the Jussie Smollett. There are people upset about criminal cases all the time. Criminal defense attorneys negotiate the best possible results for their clients. It's what we do. Some criminal defense attorneys are more successful at that than others are. And there's a reason for that. The defense attorney does their homework, they understand what the reality of the situation is, and they're able to present that in negotiations. But, don't forget, and please don't make any mistake about this, prosecutors are as equally important in negotiation of a case. The prosecutors have to be willing to negotiate a case and understand, what a just solution is. I have upwards of 140 cases that have been dismissed in just the past few years, since I started practicing here in Kirksville, Missouri in 2014. Now, I wish I could say that that was all my being, super lawyer. It's not. A portion of those were dismissed by prosecutors and never even talked to me. They just realized there was an issue with the case and dismissed it. A portion of those we talked to the prosecutors, and after talking to them, they decided to go ahead and dismiss the case. Some of those cases were dismissed because the client had pleaded to something else or took another action, what we call a deferred prosecution agreement, where the client agrees to do X, Y, Z and stay out of trouble, and the prosecutor agrees to dismiss the case. If the client doesn't do X, Y, and Z, the prosecutor can refile the case. That's called deferred prosecution agreement here in Missouri. In other states are going to have different names for it. But in that case, what happens is they dismiss the case. It's still considered a nolle pros, but the client had to agree to something to do that. And then finally, prosecutors will dismiss they'll dismiss a felony when the person pleads to a misdemeanor on the case. If that's what you've negotiated, then that can happen. Now, when that happens, yeah, you have the dismissal, but the client didn't get off scot-free. They didn't walk away free and clear. I'm not going to guess at or say how many cases I've had where case was dismissed and the client went home free and clear, because I can't say that. I have 30 of those on my wall, but uh-oh, somebody just got back. Highway Patrol Bunny Huey in the median. Well, that sucks for them. Yep. Anyway, so I can't say how many of those cases I've handled. I have 30 of them on my wall where we negotiated and the person, charges were dismissed and the client had nothing else to go. But nolle pros and dismissals of charges are rather common. That happens all the time. Sometimes, a case gets overcharged initially. The prosecutor takes a look at it, takes a look at discovery and says, you know what, this is overcharged, we're going to reduce it. And then we talk about it and we reach a resolution that's less than a full-on criminal conviction. Sometimes there's other factors. I've had cases where, it's a low-level misdemeanor, minor in possession, or, just a low misdemeanor. But the person is an immigrant, possibly an immigrant student, or they're here on an immigrant visa. Well, we talk to the prosecutor and we talk to him about a plea. Even an SIS could result in their losing their privilege to stay in the United States. I've had a couple where the prosecutors agreed, and we worked out a DPA where the person completed drug treatment or completed, alcohol treatment, and did all that as part of the DPA agreement, and the prosecutor dismissed the criminal case. That way, they don't have a conviction that forces them to leave the country or denies them the ability to re-enter if they leave the country. I don't do immigration law. If you have questions on immigration law, talk to an immigration attorney. That is a specialist area, and despite all the warnings, ABA and our Bar Association, there are no specialists. That's a specialist area. If you're interested in immigration, you talk to somebody who does immigration law. So, in those negotiations, and there's a lot that goes into negotiation. One, you have to do the homework. If you don't do the homework and you're negotiating just because, you want to try and skim a couple months off the sentence or skim a couple years off the sentence, something like that, that's a very bad way to negotiate. When you negotiate, you need to understand the reasons. You go into a negotiation with a prosecutor just saying, hey, you're a dickhead, you've overcharged this, you need to dismiss this and give my guy a break. Yeah, that's never going to happen. If you go into a negotiation talking to a prosecutor like that, not only is your guy not going to get a break, your next client isn't going to get one either. You're much better off when you go into negotiation. You go in, you talk to the prosecutor, say, I'd like to discuss the potential disposition here. You made an offer. Thank you. I appreciate your making an offer. And, it is a good offer under almost any circumstances. But I'd like to talk to you about the reasons why we should deviate from your standard offer in this case. And this case is special for these reasons. Before you ever go into that, you need to understand what those reasons are. Not why it's special to you, but why it would be special to the prosecutor. Negotiation, sales, anytime you're trying to convince somebody of something, you need to set your goals aside and your reasoning and understand why what you're asking that person to do is in that person's interest. Because if you walk in and you say, hey, look, man, I'm going to get an extra fee, or they're going to bring other business to me if we're able to do this, and that's really cool. That might be your motivation, but it's not your client's motivation, and it's not the prosecutor's motivation. And frankly, you should put your client over your collecting fees. I think there's a rule about that. So, when you go in, you talk to the prosecutor about why diverging from the standard offer is in the prosecutor's interest. One, it might be better for the community. If it keeps this guy working, doesn't lose his job, that's better for everybody. If it allows for some kind of education that will help prevent a relapse or another occurrence of this instance, again, that's better for the community and better for everybody. If there's something that's going to help resolve this and lend some level of assurance that there won't be a repeat of that violation, that's the kind of thing prosecutors want to hear. And you have to know your prosecutor. Look, you have to. There are prosecutors that when I have a veteran, we're going to go in, we're going to talk to the prosecutor about that veteran. And they're very understanding of military service. And look, in Northeast Missouri, and I'm assuming Missouri as a whole, okay, we respect our military and our veterans. We understand what these ladies and gentlemen went through, even though some of us may not have experienced it personally. but there carries some mileage. Now, that doesn't mean I'm a veteran, so I don't have to face punishment or discipline for my offenses. What it means is, if there's a reason, for example, a veteran with a drug issue, okay? You know, if the guy's a combat veteran, he's got a drug issue, or the lady's a combat veteran, she's got a drug issue, then, or a military sexual trauma veteran, sufferer, those issues can be resolved. We can help that person with the underlying cause of what's happening. Missouri has veterans treatment courts in a number of counties, and the VA will work with the court to help get that veteran the treatment they need. Most prosecutors will bend over backwards when there is a treatment option. Now, if you've been down that road 5 times, you've failed out or been kicked out of drug treatment, failed out of drug court, you're eventually going to hit a wall. That wall is going to be a prison wall, because that's where you're headed. But a defense attorney has to look for the underlying cause and the issues you can go for. I mean, look, mental health. If drug treatment has been tried and been unsuccessful, is there a mental health reason drug treatment has been unsuccessful? You cannot treat the symptoms and expect the disease to be cured. You know, that's like saying I'm going to treat my runny nose, but not my flu. You're still going to have the flu. And these are all factors that come up when we're negotiating something. And it's the same thing negotiating family law cases. Okay? As an attorney, sometimes I get caught up in some of this emotion as well. Look, the other side's being unreasonable. They're not negotiating fairly or reasonably. You know, they're treating my guy. I got to stop and remember, they don't care what my guy thinks. My guy probably doesn't care, or my girl probably doesn't care what they think. My job as a lawyer is to couch what we want in terms that's going to be in their best interest. Why they want what we're proposing. You know, I started teaching my kid this years ago. He's 10 now. And when he was 5, he would come out, we'd be driving down the road, coming back from somewhere, you know, and be like, look, it's getting late, and I know you're all tired, and the last thing you're going to want to do is go home and get the pans out and cook and make dinner. You know, we're about to pass McDonald's. Wouldn't it be a lot easier on you if we just stopped and grabbed the burger? And you know what? The kid got his burger more often than not, because he phrased it in a way that made my life easier. And that's negotiating. If I can negotiate and raise a point that's going to make the other side life easier, that's going to make it better for them, that's how we have to present things. And gosh, you can't always. You can try. Sometimes you just got to be a jerk and say, hey, look, that's just completely unreasonable. This is what needs to happen. And my fallback, if you're not going to be reasonable, is we're going to have a trial and we're going to let the judge decide what reasonable is. And that is always the fallback. But you don't get anywhere threatening people. You get to prove that threat. You know, again, negotiating is not forcing somebody to take something. Negotiating is convincing somebody that what you're offering is what they want, and that they're happy in taking it. There are a lot of people that will look at a negotiation and say that, well, if everybody is unhappy, it's probably the right result. I don't think so. I much prefer a win-win. I much prefer negotiating something out that everybody's happy with. Because if they're happy with it, the chances are it's going to hold. You know, we negotiated an agreement in a case out in January, and got a settlement on a divorce. You know, I had it all worked out. We're back in court already in the middle of April because they weren't happy. They reached an agreement. They reached the best possible agreement at that point for one party, but not the best possible agreement for the other. And what that does is it creates a situation where they're just not happy. And because they're not happy, they're fighting. They're back in court. So while it was a successful completion of the case, it was not a successful negotiation that resulted in it, because we're back. And you can't always have a successful negotiation. Both parties have to be willing to work something out, and they have to be willing to set some of the things that they thought they couldn't bend on aside. And that is almost never the case in family law. But sometimes you can work it out. So that's my spiel, way too long, but negotiating is the key to being a successful criminal defense lawyer or a successful family law lawyer. Now, that doesn't mean that you don't go to trial. Sure you do. You go to trial all the time. But there are cases that need to be settled. There are cases that need to be tried, and a smart attorney knows the difference. Please hit the like, subscribe, hit the alert button.